A very sunny good morning from the Tasmanian capital of Hobart for day 3 of racing in the 2022 Rolex Sydney Hobart Yacht Race. We've had it all in this event so far in terms of what the weather has provided. Today, probably the most pleasant day of all, but light breezes on the River Derwent and down the east coast of Tasmania. My name's Peter G. It's great to have you with us on another wonderful day, and there's going to be some excitement too as the overall handicap honours and the two-handers start to come into contention. With me in commentary is a veteran of 31 editions of this race, which is in its 77th edition in 2022. Peter Shipway. Good morning, Shippers.
Good morning, Pete. Good morning, everyone. Yes, a beautiful morning, but boy, this is a place of contrast, isn't it? 24 hours ago, the oysters were being blown off the rocks, but here it is, a glorious morning. And as you said, we've got to have a lot of finishes today. There's only 3 boats came in overnight, and this morning there's a lot of boats in Storm Bay and certainly north of Tasman Island, and the weather looks quite nice. Obviously here it's very nice, but out to sea it's been westerly overnight and it's going to go into the east and then northeast, and then that's for the next 2 days, so it'll bring the majority of the fleet home.
We'll bring you right up to date with what the weather's expected to do today, and also what is on offer down here at the Rolex Race Village a little bit later on in our update this morning. But they've let Gordon Bray, our co-commentator, onto a yacht, would you believe? But it is moored in the Kings Pier Marina, and he's with one of the great innovators of Australian ocean racing. Gordon Bray, good morning.
Good morning, Peter G. Yes, we're on board the 69-footer Moneypenny, one of the mini maxis, and I'm delighted to say that Sean Langman is the Audi Centre Sydney Blue Water Classic champion. That must feel pretty good. You've also won your division. Congratulations, Sean.
Thank you, Gordon. That's such a mouthful, and going into the great race, having quite a handy points lead, there was some trepidation about letting it all go, and first afternoon of the race we thought it was all over for us, but here we are, and it's just all sinking in. The word fairy tale comes to mind.
Well, particularly when the Noakes Group, your company, sponsored the Sydney to Gold Coast race, and you come out and win that on handicap, that really sets you up.
Well, it did set us up, and at the time I thought, it might be a little rude winning your own boat race. But then after that we backed it up with a couple of seconds and a third, and we're always in the hunt. So very proud of the team, quite chuffed how we've got this old girl going.
Well, tell us about this old girl. Where did you find her?
Well, we actually literally found her knee deep in snow in Newport, Rhode Island. We had a contract to take some submarine builders in a couple of Hobart races, and we wanted a large enough boat to transport people, and she certainly fitted that bill. Beautifully built by McConaughey Boats, and relegated basically as a gift to a naval academy. So.
Well, you've lengthened her by 4 feet to make her go faster, but before we look at your performance yesterday in Storm Bay and the Derwent, tell us about the start of the race for you. Did that go smoothly?
Oh, the start of the race was incredibly exciting. We were calling the time in, and we were 6 metres back when the gun went, which was a nice little buffer. And then we found ourselves fighting with the Supermaxis. It was unfamiliar territory for me for a while. And we knew if we could just get out cleanly, we'd set ourselves up nicely for the race. And it was very exhilarating.
And fighting with the sunfish, I hear.
Yeah, well, that was the big setback, and to be
what
honest,
happened?
Well, to be honest, I thought our race was over. We heard a very loud bang, and we broke one of the wheels. The helmsman went forward and cracked the wheel, and then the boat rounded up and fell over, as they do, when you've broken your rudder. And we thought the rudder was broken, and the tallest young fella, we dangled him over the side, and he said there's something very ugly wrapped around the rudder. So we still had the rudder, but the sunfish was actually lodged on the rudder. So we backed the boat up with the sails, and the fish came loose, and then we thought, well, if we can just finish, maybe we can salvage something.
Okay, well, just working our way here towards the cockpit, because when the squall hit yesterday morning, things got pretty chaotic as well, and there were some injuries.
Well, we did suffer a few injuries, and famous ocean racer David Blanchard, the Rat, is still in hospital. He got a bit of a leg injury, but these boats, this boat in particular, you consider is what we say fairly high wooded, like Lorcanec's next door to us, and we're about the same height for its length. It's got quite a bit of topside. And it was designed to race around the cans a bit, so you can drop your spinnaker through this very large main hatch. With the force of the water, and the water was coming over at this height. Gordon Maguire just did an amazing job driving the boat.
So you lost the whole cockpit cover?
We lost this hatch cover.
You got thrown down the back of the boat?
Yeah, I was holding onto it, trying to lash it down, and a wave came under, took me above the pedestals and above the helms and the wheel, holding onto this thing like riding a boogie board. Yeah, so fortunately I was clipped on, so I got the end of my tether with a jerk and still had the hatch, which Gordon said, "I'm glad you still got that. Can you get it back on where it belongs?"
Just very quickly finishing, Maluka, Peter Langman,
yeah,
the oldest and the smallest boat in the fleet. Your son is out north of Tasman Island at the moment. How are they going?
Oh, he's second in division at the moment, and you know, willing him on, and yeah, I'm just incredibly proud. You know, you talk about the start. I had one eye back on Maluka with some affection and pride. And yeah, I'm so looking forward to him getting here and hugging him. More that I'm his dad. You know, I'm proud of him, but I'm also fearful for him. You know, I want him to get here. Yeah.
Well, you've got to hand it to those 30-footers, but Maluka, Peter G, is the oldest boat in the fleet at 90 years of age. She's in magnificent condition. Make sure you have a look at her when you come down to the docks. And yeah, she's going to campaign in the Fastnet race. That's going to be pretty fantastic later in the year. But Sean, congratulations again on your division winner and the Audi Centre Sydney Blue Water Point Score champion.
Thank you so much, Gordon, and to Sean. Fantastic. That almost felt like being on board as he graphically described the conditions that they've had to contend with, Moneypenny. And talking about Maluka, yesterday when I was wandering around Kings Pier, someone came up to me and said, "Where is Maluka? I want to see Maluka." People love these classic old yachts. She's was built in 1932 of Huon Pine, or King Billy Pine, I think it might be. So that's a Tasmanian connection as well. And Sean has a great connection with the Channel area down at the hotel at Commandy, and so we sort of down here consider that Moneypenny and Maluka are Tasmanian entries as well. There's the Kings Pier Marina. People still talk about the yachts tying up in Constitution Dock. It doesn't really happen anymore. So on the more modern moorings in the foreground there is where all the yachts will be penned up.
Well, I think this year they're going to put some boats in there, Pete.
Maluka perhaps will go in.
I heard at the briefing, the Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania representative said that, is it Tracy Matthews?
Yes, Tracy.
Yeah, Tracy was at the briefing, said that smaller yachts, obviously that can fit in with draft and beam, they'll be put into the dock because the West Coaster race that's running at the moment, it's their 50th anniversary race, they're coming into Kings Pier as well.
Are they?
So they're going to dock here, so it'll make space a premium. So smaller boats are going in there.
Yeah, like old times.
Well, it'll be lovely.
Yeah.
Terrific. Yeah.
The battle yesterday on the river in those atrocious conditions, the northerly gusting up to 70, 80 kilometres an hour in the river, and I think the highest recorded wind gust yesterday in Tasmania was 135 kilometres per hour. It made for very exciting racing, and the handicap battle to the line was something to behold between Celestial and Guaylo, the TP52s.
Well, all the boats that finished yesterday in the morning, it was terrific to see them come up the river in that wind. But especially Guaylo and Celestial, fantastic footage of those boats. And here they are now, Guaylo with the white hull and Celestial with the dark blue hull.
What was the aim here? How far did Guaylo have to finish in front of Celestial to put itself in the box seat to win on handicap?
Well, I think she had to be about probably 25 minutes ahead, 20 to 25 minutes ahead. So Celestial, all she really had to do was stay close to Guaylo. Guaylo had to try and extend, but the boats are very similar. They're TP52s, both designed by the Judel Vrolik company in Germany, both launched in 2011, so a lot of similarities, and they basically go at the same speed, obviously, because they're here at the same time.
But over there to to windward, we see the blue hull there of Celestial, and they had gear damage. So they must have been thinking, can we hang on to Guelo? And they did until attacking duel off Taruta. They must have thrown a dozen tacks at one another, these boats, just from White Rock, the last half of the journey up the River Derwent.
Yes, I think it'd be safe to say that Celestial just had to keep safe, really. She just had to keep in touch with Guelo, wouldn't let her go. And you can see there the top of Celestial's mainsail just flagging away. There is a small tear there, and that would have been a bit of heart-in-the-mouth stuff, I'm sure, to make sure that that didn't extend any further. But you can see the conditions. 2 reefs in the mainsail, tiny headsails, twisted right off at the top of the sails to give the boats, keep the boat on their feet. And got to be very accurate in your sailing here, the helmsmen and the tacticians and the trimmers. And you'd have the tactician talking to the helmsman and someone calling the wind, which might sound funny, but they're calling the puffs. If they get a severe puff, they've got to let the trimmer and the helmsman know. The trimmer's got to react to that. The helmsman's got to react to it. Now, there's a good puff, exactly what I'm talking about. You see Celestial, and they're both boats in really good puffs of wind. Celestial just sitting behind Guelo, and there's some good lumpy waves there.
Yeah, there were white caps on the river all day.
Yep, and you'll see that headsail twisted right off at the top, not fully trimmed on. That's the way they've got to do it in this wind conditions. Trimmed too far in and the boat will sort of really capsize over, be hard to steer and be very slow. So the trimmers have got to work in tandem with the helmsman. The helmsman will be calling the trim, say, I've got good trim, I've got good speed, I've got too much mainsail on or whatever. But here you can see where Guelo has extended, coming towards, I would guess, the John Garrow, a few miles from the finish. They have extended on Celestial. But Celestial knew exactly how far they had to be behind Guelo. It was a case of no mistakes, just hang in there. If Guelo was going to tack on them, well, they just have to live with that. They couldn't split away in case that something dramatic happened as far as the wind shift or the wind died. They just had to stay right in the exhaust pipe of Guelo.
Given all the weather we've had, it's really gone to script the race in terms of perhaps the line honours winner and the handicap winner provisionally at the moment.
Well, the weather modelling was such that it was these TP52s, these 52-footers, it was known that they were going to figure very highly in that handicap picture. And as it is now, provisionally, 4 of them in the top 4, and I think 6 in the top 10. So they're very quick downwind. They've all got extremely good crews on them. Excellent crews. I mean, world-class yachtsmen spread throughout these
boats. Is this
boats.
what you live for, though, where a yachtsman, to have a head-to-head race like this to the finish line? So often in the River Derwent, there's no wind.
You'd live for that if you're on Celestial, because you know you're going to beat Guelo. But Matt Donald and his crew and Guelo, well, certainly they'd be living for it, but they'd be thinking they'd like Celestial another half hour behind them, because as it turns out now, Matt and his talented crew will probably provisionally second and may remain that way. Celestial, at the moment, as I say, provisionally, we've got to say that all the time because there's still boats out there and other issues could affect the result. They're top of the list, and they're just nice tack there. You can see the sail reefed heavily down. That'll be 2 reefs in that mainsail. There's the crew stacked out on the deck. You can see Rob Greenhall there, the tactician, towards the back. He's the Englishman that's come aboard to beef up Sam Haynes's crew, and he's won this race a couple of times before on Guacamo and on Ichiban. And Josh Jr., a very talented New Zealand yachtsman, outstanding Finn representative for New Zealand in the Olympics and in their Sail GP team. He came aboard late as well. And a lot of these guys were with Sam Haynes last year on Celestial when he had that disappointment of being in this position of being provisionally first, and they got penalised 40 minutes for an infringement during the race when he wasn't having a listening radio watch.
So do you think Sam Haynes would be saying at this stage, no mistakes now, fellas? There's the finish at Castro Esplanade in our sights, and we know that Guelo can't beat us now unless we do something wrong.
Well, that's exactly right. But this is a very, very good crew. That looks like Sam at the helm there.
So the trimmers and the helmsmen working in tandem, but a good portion of the crew just sitting on the weather rail all the way up the River Derwent.
Yes, there's probably one of the guys as a wind caller, a wind whisperer if you like. He'd be calling the wind loudly to the helmsman and the trimmer so they can hear. So you can just see she's getting a puff there. She's very close to the finish there.
I think they put in one more tack after this to sneak inside the yellow buoy at Castray Esplanade, and the feeling of elation that they've done all they could have done.
They're across there now, and that's Rob Greenhill at the helm there. But wow, what a performance! There's Sam, absolutely over the moon, and at the moment they're in the box seat. Yep,
it's nothing they can do about it here, but they certainly are on terra firma, thinking that we've got one hand on the Tattersalls Cup. We've got overseas entries in this race this year, more than we've had during the COVID period, of course. Remember, in 2020 there was no Rolex Sydney Hobart, but the next yacht across the line, Khaleesi, there she is off Sandy Bay. So we've had 25 finishes so far in the race, 9 retirements, 1 more overnight. We'll detail that to you, but 100 yachts hopefully will be classified as finishers in this race, and this is Khaleesi tacking its way to the finish in very light westerly breeze.
Yes, owned by Rob Aldous and Sandy Farquharson from the Middle Harbour Yacht Club in Sydney. And you can just see it's very quiet progress there, and soft winds, and the massive contrast to 24 hours ago. And they've been a regular competitor in local races, but unfortunately they retired last year from the Hobart race, so they're going to get there this time, and they'll be across the line in, as you said, in 26th position. At the moment they're down on 28th position overall on handicap and 4th in their division, and
so they're going to be 26th across the line, but still got some spectator craft there, welcoming them to the southern capital here in Tasmania, Australia. This is Hobart. What a beautiful waterway that the amateurs and professional sailors enjoy every day of the week. And Pretty Woman should be next in. You might be able to just see her back down there near
yeah, we've got
Long
a couple
Beach
there.
somewhere.
We've got Pretty Woman and Mayfair that are in the river. Pretty Woman is, she's currently on handicap. She'd be in 30th place, and it's the 4th go at this race. There's Khaleesi just tacking now. She's got about 10 minutes to go to the finish, I would say, Pete, something like that, or a bit longer perhaps.
And
Khaleesi.
the Royal Yacht Club of Tasmania vessels there. One will, once she crosses the line, the tender will go out and guide her in, and perhaps take her beside the Taste of Summer Festival, which is at the other end of the Sullivan's Cove precinct here on the waterfront in Hobart. She'll get a great roar from people down there. That's one of the highlights of the race, to be taken up close to the spectators that are down here. And that's an experience that I'm sure our international competitors have heard so much about, and they're looking forward to experiencing. And we had some TP52s from overseas, a New Zealander and an American entry that would be a little bit disappointed now that they weren't able to feature in the handicap honours stakes.
Yeah, they were both favourite. There's a couple of favourites out there, but Caro and Warrior won. 3rd and 4th respectively. We spoke to the owners yesterday, and they were delighted to get here, and here we see them coming up the river. They were just ahead of Celestial and Gualo, and that thrilling duel they had up, and here's Caro, and that's Warrior 1, the blue hull of Warrior 1.
From Connecticut, where the temperature was -3 last time I looked, to temperatures here that were in the low 30s the day before yesterday.
Well, you can see these are both TP52s as well, and they're well reefed down. They finished just shortly, half an hour ahead of the Gualo Celestial duel. You can just see the spray going everywhere. 2 reefs in the mainsail. Wow, look at that white water there. That is terrific shot as Warrior 1 tacks coming up the river. Like Niagara Falls there, Pete.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they've really experienced everything that the Rolex Sydney Hobart's got to offer.
But that welcome they get in Hobart, that often attracts people back. I mean, they forget the hard times. They say, wow, how good's this? As I said yesterday, or even the day before, the welcome here is unbelievable.
And this is back live now, coming up to the finishing line. Khaleesi will lay the mark and go right through those 2 yellow buoys at Castray Esplanade and drop the sails and hug and enjoy their 26th placing in terms of line honours. And plenty of smiles there, tired smiles, but even down the field a little bit, the adrenaline across the finishing line, the realisation hits that you've completed the one of the great blue water classics of world ocean racing.
Yes, especially for the first timers too. It's a great thrill, no matter what time you finish, to say you've done a Hobart as such. It really is good. And here's Khaleesi now. She's all but there, I'd say, Pete, just putting the bow up slightly. That's the left-hand end of the finishing line, so she would be across there now and drop the sails and come into the dock and get the traditional welcome.
Fantastic shot from our drone there. You don't often see the finish line in its entirety like that. And across the line she goes. There'll be a gun from Castro Esplanade to tell them that they're finished. And so 2 hours and 20 minutes, 2 days, 20 hours, 20 minutes, the time for Khaleesi.
And that's quick. That's a quick time for this 46-footer. And we had a lot of boats inside 2 days in this race, and it was been a very quick race.
The record for competing in this race is 54 Rolex Sydney Hobarts, and we're going to take a look at one of the boats that finished yesterday, and that particular competitor was on board.
Yeah, Tony Ellis, the man they know as Ace or Grumpy, he's on board. Yeah, 54 he's done. It's an incredible number, isn't it? When you think there's only been 77 races, so he hasn't missed too many.
He hasn't
missed too many, but yeah, he was aboard No Limit, and again, like we keep saying yesterday, it was rugged. And let's have a look at No Limit. David Goates' boat. She was third in 2018 as Voodoo, but David's got this boat going pretty well. And look at that. There's a mainsail, torn, held together by the leech line. That's that thin line at the end of the sail that tensions the back of the sail. And that's hanging in there. And hopefully that tear's not going to get any bigger, because they can't lower the main, really. Well, they can lower the main, but it'll leave them a bit short of horsepower even in this strong wind. But there she's coming in. You can see the damage up the bow. A spinnaker got washed overboard and took most of the pulpit out. You can see they've done running repairs out there. There's those stanchions are all bent over. But anyway, they got here, and I asked Tony after the race, will there be 55? He said yes. So hopefully he finds a boat to go on.
a lot of competitors say, that's it, never doing it again, and within 2 or 3 days
Exactly.
they say, well, yeah, I think I will, but he knows how he's feeling. And physically, he's still able to contribute.
Yes, absolutely. I think he did his first race in 1963. He raced on Dame Paddy in the America's Cup in 1967 for Australia. Long-time crew mate and crew member of Ragamuffin with Sid Fisher. They were great mates. I think they did something like 40 Hobarts together. Then I think Sid gave him the boot, as Sid does. You're lucky to last one race with Sid. Ace lasted 40.
How did he transgress in the 40th race, I wonder?
You'd never know with Sid. But anyway, I think there's a bit of a story there. So anyway, he's been on No Limit, I think, for the last few Hobarts with David Goates, and they retired last year, but back this year in a pretty good performance.
I don't think I've seen so many yachts finishing here in Hobart with sail damage. We hear about it putting yachts out of the race at sea, but to see them coming up from Derwent nursing their yachts to the finish, because I guess they can't put as much pressure into the sail just in case the whole thing blows.
Well, that's right, and also close to the finish you probably don't want to be changing sails. Certainly Celestial and Gualo didn't want to be changing sails, because you could mess the sail change up and it'd cost you dearly, or have some damage. And here's talking about damage. Here's Grant Warrington and Stefan Racing following Willow in, and that's what ended up with their headsail being torn to bits as they just crossed the finishing line. Willow just beat them home, and Willow finished. She was
fifth across the line.
Fifth across the line. Stefan was sixth. Yeah. And again, they finished early morning yesterday, about 24 hours ago, but you could see there the damage that was occurred to Stefan Racing's headsail.
There was some talk that Stefan Ackery would be racing this year because she followed the Maxis home last year and would have been just behind the leading four this year. Perhaps, if not for that Hetzel damage.
Well, she probably would have beaten Willow, but anyway, that's, you know, she's an 80-footer, so she's not going to beat the 100-footers.
No. So out there today, what can we expect? What can the yachts men and women expect? There looks like a bit of traffic jam coming up on the east coast of Tasmania as they get to the turning point, 40 nautical miles from the finish at Tasman Island.
Well, there's real congestion north of Tasman at the moment. We can just see it there on the tracker, Pete.
Look at them all lining up there, and they're in just light airs at the moment.
Yeah, it's still southwesterly or westerly, so they'll be still on the breeze, but as the day goes on, the breeze will get around into the east and then the northeast, but it's still light. I looked at the weather report earlier, or the observation at Tasman Island. Tasman only had a westerly of 5 knots, so very light. So it's going to be slow progress, but you can see there's a lot of boats, well, a few in the bay and a lot north of Tasman.
Just looking at Storm Bay, Cassiopeia 68 is an interesting competitor. This yacht has come all the way from Lake Balaton in western Hungary. It's the biggest lake in Central Europe, deepest point 11 feet. And they're in a lot deeper water there in Storm Bay.
11 feet. Well, if we just keep with the tracker now, you can see Mini, the TH stands for a two-handed boat, but just south of Tasman Island, there's Mistral TH. She's leading the two-handed group on handicap, but we'll have a look at those in detail in a moment. But if I can go right up to the top here, we'll go back along the coast there, see all different boats, mainly east of the rum line off Maria Island, and we'll go out up here a bit further. Here we go. There's Shooting Island, Shooting Passage, up off St Helens. Sail Exchange there, she broke her rudder, so she's going into port. I'm not sure where she's going to go. Gun Runner, that's the Army boat. Third smallest boat in the fleet.
And it's won the duel with the Navy this year because Navy 1 had to withdraw yesterday.
But I'll just keep going back up. There's Cape Barren, there's Flinders. I'll keep going across Bass Strait. I'm going across Bass Strait. I hope to find a boat here in a moment. Where's that little Currawong? I'm looking for Currawong, Pete. She's the two girls.
Maybe...
there she is. There she is.
Just a bit east of the rum line.
Yeah, and she's still going. So there's mainland Australia at the top of the screen, and Currawong, Kathy Veal,
and Bridget
Cannon. They stopped for 24 hours in Eden.
And that proved very prudent. They hold up there, let the worst of the weather go by, and they're determined to finish. It looks like it will be the second day of the new year by the time they get into Hobart.
Well, you can see those wind arrows. They're round in the southeast already, and as the day goes on, they'll get further into the east and then the northeast. So they should make reasonably good progress. They're, at least halfway across Bass Strait, and they will be. Yeah, I think they'll get in before the second. But anyway,
that
good
was
on
the
them.
prediction when they spoke to them early this morning last night. But yeah, you would have really thought. They're certainly wouldn't be misunderstood if they turned around and went back to Sydney yesterday. So they're determined to finish, and there's only been one two-handed entry retire. We've got 9 retirements altogether, and the latest happened off. They were heading to Triabunna now, and that was Eye Candy, retired at about 10 o'clock last night, damage to the forestay, so that's 9 retirements. So 100th place on the water is Currawong. Just running through a few other mishaps overnight. Sian Moon also reported damage to the gooseneck about 9:30. All on board okay, the boat continuing to race under jury rig, and yachtsmen and women love fixing problems, don't they? So they'll do all they can to get to the finish. She's off St Helens Point. Flying Cloud has a broken boom, still racing, currently 31 nautical miles off Cape Sonorat. That's Shooting Island, just south of Maria Island, of the Freycinet Peninsula. And so that's 3 at sea that have got their problems, but they're still determined to get to Hobart.
There's Khaleesi, I think, is it? Just dropped the sails and going to be with us just behind us at the moment in about 10 minutes, I think. They'll be shown to their berth. And then I think we've got Pretty Woman in the river as well. So they'll be coming in. This breeze will probably fade a bit during the day, won't it, Pete?
I think so. And tonight there are sea breezes forecast, but they will die out as the sun goes down. So there's not going to be a lot of help for the yachts today. About 5 kilometres an hour from the west at the moment. Beautiful if you want to come down here to the Rolex Race Village, and I recommend it to you. There's a lot on offer here in the Harbourside precinct of Hobart. As I mentioned earlier, the Taste of Summer is on over at Salamanca, and if you move along the waterfront, you'll be able to look at the yachts in the pens here at Kings Pier, and then retire to a beanbag or a cane chair in the Rolex Race Village. It's something I recommend to all the locals who can get down here today. Ideal conditions. Come on down and say hello. The Rolex Sydney Hobart Race Village has been open for about half an hour now. It's 9:30 Eastern Australian summertime, and if you don't take an alcoholic drink till the sun's over the yardarm, then why not get a coffee from Ben and James at Davey Street Garage here? It's all on offer, all the food, drink that you require.
You're getting a freebie for that plug,
I got one from a neighbour and a swimming pal of mine. In fact, I had a swim this morning in our beautiful temperate waters, 21 degrees, the water temperature here in Hobart. And I was a bit disappointed that John Winning Jr., traditionally the winning skipper of line honours, gets thrown into the drink, but he didn't this year.
Is that Fahrenheit or centigrade?
It's Celsius, and I can tell you that is very warm for Hobart.
It sure is.
I did swim in 9 degrees Celsius over the winter period. But they breed us tough down here, Peter Shipway. Gordon Bray is wandering around Kings Pier Marina now. He's been on Money Penny. I wonder what he's got to tell us from out there amongst the 26 boats now, which has finished this great race.
Well, Peter, I'm just watching some of the those most recent finishes about to come into Kings Pier, but it's a lovely scene here. The weather is just beautiful at the moment. And when you were both talking about Tony Ellis competing in his 54th, a record 54th Rolex Sydney Hobart, he sailed 41 of those races with Sid Fisher, who funded 5 America's Cup campaigns and introduced some very famous sailors like Ian Murray, Huey Trahan and Jimmy Spithill to America's Cup racing. So a wonderful figure, Sid Fisher, and Tony Ellis certainly carrying on that tradition. But when we started here, our cameraman Adam was 100 feet away because we're standing alongside Law Connect, and if we pan across here we can see the twin steering wheels. They're about 5 or 6 metres apart, and although the race is about the handicap honours, the smallest boat's able to compete with the biggest, you've got to say these 100-footers are the glamour boats. They capture all of the imagination, and it's really about coming down here and putting a face to the name. So the people of Hobart, a lot of tourists will be here, and to see these 100-footers in person is just awe-inspiring. Of course, everyone goes for a quiet little drink. They go across to the Customs House. If you look behind me, Khaleesi is just coming in now. We have Blackjack here across to the right from Khaleesi, and then Hamilton Island Wild Oats, who came fourth across the line. And then just beyond Khaleesi over here, we see a bit of activity on Andu Comanche with that familiar red hull, AC 007, the James Bond feel. But 3 cheers here for Khaleesi. Hip hip, hooray, hip hip, hip hip. Congratulations, guys. The 46-footer, they've had a splendid race and they've got big smiles on their faces. But yeah, the quiet little drink at the Customs House. The original quiet little drink, by the way, Peter G and Peter Shipway, was actually held at the Cornish Mount Hotel in West Hobart. And Dick Hammond and a couple of his mates, famous Sydney Hobart yachtsmen, actually wanted to get away from all of this, all of the crowds, and they found this quiet little hotel. And it turned out the publican of that hotel was a guy called Charlie Aylett, who was actually the Speaker of the House in the Tasmanian Parliament, and he gave them crayfish, fish and beers. But then we had the Shipwrights Hotel up in Battery Point, and that's where the quiet little drink is held these days. And I think the record, it was started by Tony Cable and John Dawson, and the record order stands at 20,000 beers. And that was back in 1980. I don't think they're going to beat that this year. But it's a wonderful scene down here, and the weather is just beautiful. And I think the real story for me now is whether the 30-foot Currawong with 71-year-old Kathy Veal and 64-year-old Bridget Canham can make it to Hobart. That would be amazing in their 30-footer in the two-handed division. They're into Bass Strait now, fingers crossed for them, but that's an incredible performance for a 70-year-old and a 60-year-old senior female sailors, and let's hope they can make it all the way to Hobart, because if they do, they will get a hero's welcome.
Absolutely, Gordon, and I'm sure Rob Jobb and former Australian cricketer James Faulkner are hoping that beer drinking record is beaten at the Shipwrights Arms this year. And if you head for the Cornish Mount, I don't know if it'll be quite what it was back then. It's now an adult entertainment establishment, so
right.
We'll leave that to others.
Well, we'll stay here. Pete Gordon might want to check that out. But the interesting thing about the Shipwright Arms, at one stage when the quiet little drink was in full swing, probably in the mid-80s, the signs went up around the bar, dance on the bar at your own risk. That was... So
they were different times, weren't they,
very
Peter?
much different, very much different. But anyway, good fun times indeed. But why don't we, while we've got a bit of time now, and look at the handicap positions, I think, which is important, and especially go back and have a look at some of the smaller boats, because they're still out there and they've got a lot to play for. At the moment, overall, as we say, the divisions have set, the overall positions are provisional. I must stress that this is all provisional. Here is overall in the race so far. This is on handicap. Celestial first, Guelo second, Caro third, Warrior 1 fourth. And then we break into divisions, and the fleet are broken up into 5 divisions, dependent on size and rating. And the saying is, if you win your division, you've got to win your division first. If you win your division, then, well, the rest looks after itself.
How is the fleet divided up into the divisions?
Well, they look at their handicap rating and basically divide it by 5 and split the fleet up, and they try and equate like boats to like boats. You know, if there's obviously all the 100-footers go in the one division, and that scales down to probably the 60-footers, and then the 50-footers, and then the 30-footers and 40-footers, and they try and equalise the number of boats in the division based on size and handicap rating. So, and
there's a Corinthian division too for the older yachts.
That comes after as well, but there's 5 divisions for the handicap prizes. So if we look now and we go to Division 0, which will be all the big boats, we can see that Moneypenny, Sean Langman is leading at the moment. I don't think anything will change here because all the big boats are in. So Moneypenny first, Alive second, and URM Group third. Now, I might talk about the URM Group, Pete. They have won quite a valued trophy in this race already. It's for the trophy, I think it's the Ichiban Trophy, for the first conventionally ballasted yacht to finish the race.
And Ichiban had the record up until yesterday.
And I think she beat it by about 4 minutes. But what conventionally ballast means is that there's no swinging keels and no water ballast. They're just like your old-fashioned boat. So URM Group has won that, and that's Anthony Johnson's boat. He had 3 of his brothers on board, was skippered by Marcus Ashley Jones, and on board was a guy called Peter Harris. Now,
So do you think at the start they're thinking about, well, the race record, Andu Comanche, will be perhaps at the front and going for that? We might try and get the normally aspirated boat, so to speak, record?
No, I think that just falls into place when they get here. I think they're aware of it, but I think they just want to get here as quick as they can and let the prizes take care of themselves. But where I was getting to with the URM group, Peter Harris was on board, an outstanding 18-foot skiff sailor, and his father, John Hanger Harris, was on board Love and War when she won in 74 and 78 with Peter Kurtz, and he was also aboard Bob Clifford's Tasmania when she took line honours in the 50th race in 1974. Bob Clifford, a well-known Tasmanian, Beanhead, as we know him in the yachting circles. So
84, I think, was it?
No, 94 was the 50th
94,
year. 94, yeah. So we were talking yesterday about how the generations are changing. Steve Jarvin was on that boat, on URM as well. Jason Waterhouse, an Olympian. Steve Jarvin's son, Sevi, was on Andu Comanche.
There's a lot of familial connections, aren't there, across the various entries?
Yeah, and just, again, getting back to 74, 78 on Love and War, skippered by Peter Kurtz. Peter Kurtz always said, the Hobart race never lets you down, meaning that you're always going to get a thumping or a bashing somewhere along the line. And it's quite true when you think about it. There's always something that goes wrong or something that happens that makes this race quite unique.
And you marvel at the variability of our weather systems. A cold front came through yesterday, and that produced the gale force northerlies, and then things have moderated since. So, you just never take it for granted what Mother Nature's throwing at you. It'll change within a couple of hours.
Yeah. Now, let's have a look at Division 1, which again is the TP52s. Celestial's leading that, as you expect. Guelo, Caro and Warrior 1, they were all the top 4 overall. So we'll go away from them because we've given them a bit of a go over. Now we're getting down into some of the smaller yachts. Enterprise Next Generation from Western Australia, she did very well. She finished in the early evening. And
she stood by a yacht that had gear trouble earlier. And do you know how much redress they got?
No, I think that's going to be held at 4 o'clock this afternoon. So they should be granted that. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't know the circumstances. Here's Mayfair, the 46-footer. Rogers design, just crossing the line, the blue hull there. Lovely morning, as we say. And the crew very, very happy with themselves. And they will be about, what, a 29th?
27th.
27th across the line. And a few hugs there. We've done it. Hugs. Well done.
They'll have some stories to tell.
Yes.
And they will be told.
Yes. So we'll get back to the handicaps in the smaller boats. So Enterprise Next Generation provisionally leading Division 2, Allegria Republic. She's put another good race together. Rod Jones from Queensland. And Chutzpah. She looks as though she'll get another divisional prize for Bruce Taylor. Boy, he's been in this race 41 times. I think 22, this will be 23 divisional prizes, 6 divisional wins. He's had a second and a third in this race in different boats, and wow, he's up there again. So it's a fantastic performance, very popular.
I think his son is on board as well.
Yes, he is, Drew. I think he's done his 28th race or 29th, all with his dad. And Khaleesi there, you can see she just finished, and she's provisionally 4th, and Pretty Woman will be 5th. So we get a bit smaller again, the Division 3 boats. And we've got Sunrise. Now, here's the boat that won the last Fastnet race. The Fastnet race is held every 2 years as opposed to the Hobart race being held every year. Sunrise, she won Fastnet last year. She was second in the Middle Sea race in controversial circumstances. She won her division in the Caribbean 600. So here she is again, Adrian Cahalan aboard. 30 races for Adrian, our most famous lady sailor, no doubt about that, in the Hobart race. So Sunrise leading at the moment from South Brittany is second, and Packman, a two-hander, is third in that division. Going down to Kraken 42S. You can see it there on the tracker.
Yeah, that's good to see a Tasmanian entry there.
So I'll stress, none of these boats are finished. You can see there, Sunrise is 7 miles southeast of the Iron Pot, so she's almost in the river. She's just short of the river. South Brittany is northeast of Tasman, so she's still got to get around Tasman. And you can see the speed there. The speeds are very much slower than they were yesterday, Pete.
So distance to go is the DTG.
That's it. SOG, speed over the ground, and COG, course over the ground, and then estimated elapsed time to finish. Then we go into Division 4. We're getting into the small fellas now. Midnight Rambler. Well, this would be popular. Eddie Saltis, former Sydney guy, but he's now residing in Tasmania. He won in his little boat the tragic 1998 race. So Ed's leading, but he's still northeast of Tasman, not round yet, doing 3.6 knots. That's slow. And second is Mistral, Rupert Henry's little two-hander, who's put out an amazing performance.
And this year the two-handers are eligible to win the overall
Absolutely.
prize.
They won't do it, but they are, you're right, eligible. And then Ariel from Sydney, she's in third spot in her division. She got third in the Hobart race in about 2015, I think. Now we're getting the little fellas. And in the Division 5 is Crux, a two-hander. She was second overall in the two-hander division last year. So she's doing well again this year, little SNS 34 from Sydney.
And they did a bit of a U-turn on the first afternoon.
Right. They lost an hour and a half. They went round the wrong marks in the harbour. So she's got herself out of trouble. But look who's second, the tiny Maluka, Peter Langman, that we've heard about before.
And is this Gun Runner's
Absolutely.
best race ever?
Well, she's, let me say, she's still got a long way to go. But at the moment, they should take a photo of that and stop the race. But she's in third, and she's normally amongst the stragglers, but good on them. So they're starting to... The breeze will fill in from behind, so that will help the smaller boats. White Bay Azuro fourth. She's another popular boat for Shane Kearns. But Crux and White Bay Azuro are sister ships. The only difference is Crux has only got two-handed crew, and White Bay Azuro has got a full crew of 6. So that's all the divisional split. We might just quickly look at the two-handers. They are being led by Mistral. Sunfast Racing is second, and Packman is third. So all these boats still at sea. So as we keep saying, a lot to play for. The big boats are in, and the 50-footers are in, and now the 46-footers are starting to drift in, and on a beautiful morning in Hobart. But they're not going to have a fast passage up the river. They're going to be tacking very slowly in this very light breeze. But so far, so good. We've got a lot of the fleet in. We've got how many boats now, Pete?
27 by my count. Mayfair.
Yeah, no, these two are finished.
Yes.
It just hasn't quite updated.
Mayfair
the
not quite across yet.
No, Mayfair's in. So 28 finish.
Yep.
And next to finish will be your mates from Hungary in that shallow lake. How do they sail there? Do they lift the keel, do they?
I don't know. They'll be able to go back to Hungary, though, and tell a great story. And they were so much looking forward to getting here and experience what even landlocked ocean racers have heard about since they were youngsters.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And then Sunrise will be finishing after her.
Peter, thanks very much for that comprehensive rundown. So right across the divisions, you're up to date now. By 4 o'clock this afternoon, things will have changed, of course, and if you'd like to rejoin us then, we'll bring you right up to date with what has transpired here in southern Tasmania on this it'll be into the 4th day of racing by then. If you're in Hobart, why not come down here midday local time? We'll be conducting a Q&A on the stage here at the Rolex Sydney Hobart Race Centre. We'll get some personalities, some people who've just completed the race, and they'll be able to give you a first-hand feel of what it's like to compete in the pinnacle of ocean racing in the world, and that is the Rolex Sydney Hobart Blue Water Classic. It is a bluebird day, as they would say in the US today, here in Hobart. For people watching where it's the middle of winter, I know you're jealous. We'll warm you up if you join us here at 4 o'clock for the latest update. So thanks everybody for being with us here live in Hobart. Look forward to your company throughout the day. Good morning.